This is my very first watch, and this is my most recent watch. Between these two, there's about 30 years. There's also about 30 watches. This is my entire watch journey. The good, the bad, and the straight up ugly. Welcome back to Bark and Jack. I am Adrian, and this channel has been, for the past 3 years, about documenting my journey of exploring watches, from transitioning from a person who just always wore a watch and enjoyed watches to someone who started to really learn about watches and explore them as a hobby. And this place has been a really fun place for me to document essentially what I find out and what I experience. I'm kind of documenting where I'm going forward, but I haven't looked back. About this time last year for Christmas, a chap called Patrick, who was interning for Bark and Jack, he found this watch, which is my very first watch, on eBay, and he gave it to me for Christmas. Around 1988, I was living in Florida at the time. My dad was stationed at MacDill Air Base. I remember sitting in the back of a brown Isuzu Trooper, playing with the bezel and just being obsessed with this watch. And that is my earliest memory of enjoying a watch. Around 1990, I got my first Flick Flack watch. And around 1994, that's when I got my Timex Iron Man. It was around this time that I started to get into straps as well. Me and my dad and my next door neighbor, Tom, we used to buy animal watch straps and you could swap out your straps. A couple of years later, I'm guessing around 1998, I got a Casio calculator watch. I don't remember buying this. I don't remember being given it. I don't know how I got it, but I remember owning it. Around 1998, 1999, my dad was stationed to RAF Bruggen in Germany. And that's where I bought my G-Shock, my military G-Shock. It had G-Shock imprinted on the case, but it didn't have the white paint in the imprint. And so it wasn't easy to see that it was a real G-Shock. Looking back, I wish I'd kept it. After that, it was my GCSE times around the year 2000. I distinctly remember having a Casio address book watch. And I remember doing my science GCSE. I typed into this address book the whole process for photosynthesis, assuming that I would need that for some reason. It was a complete waste of time. I didn't need it, and I failed anyway. Me and my dad used to buy watches together. We used to talk about watches together. So me buying a watch was often linked with something my dad did. My dad was posted out to Incirlik in Turkey in around the year 2000. There's a road outside the base, Incirlik base, and it's called the Strip. And there's loads of fake watch shops down there. It's kind of the tradition was when you go there, you buy a $20 fake watch. And I found a Tag Heuer watch. I was obsessed with Tag Heuer at the time, especially the chronographs with the weird, very 90s bracelet that is absolutely foul now. But at the time, I absolutely loved it. And that's what I got. I got myself a Tag Heuer chronograph with this kind of alternating brushed steel, polished steel bracelet on it. And I thought this was really pretty cool. That wasn't until I got back to school and there were quite a few wealthy kids at my school, and a lot of people thought that this was a real tag, and that felt weird. I remember feeling like a fraud having this fake watch. One of my mates, a guy called Kyle, had an animal watch, and I was telling him how cool I thought his animal watch was, and he was saying how much he liked my Tag Heuer. I remember just saying, have the tag if I can have your animal watch. He took my Tag Heuer and I had his animal watch. That was until 2001. When my parents gave me, for my 16th birthday, they gave me a Kahuna chronograph. That watch lasted me, I think, probably about 4 years. The longest that I'd kept a watch up until then. All of these watches look so amazingly dated. We're now at the year 2005. I was at university studying music, and I remember getting my student loan through. And the singer in the band that I was in, we both went off to a skate shop and we purchased these Nixon watches that were on leather bund straps. And we just bought one each. Never wore it, but I don't know why I bought it. So although I bought that Nixon watch, I didn't wear it. I was still wearing my Kahuna, whatever, that 16th birthday watch, until around 2007, when I went to Argos and I bought a bench rectangle watch. I don't know why I bought it. I think I just wanted a new watch. I'm sure I liked it at the time. It's just funny how styles change. It just looks foul. I wore that watch for a very long time. It wasn't until 2011. I'd moved to London. I was working at Apple and I treated myself to a Citizen Eco Drive chronograph. I remember this being a special purchase. It was so special that I actually Instagrammed that purchase. It was the most expensive watch I'd ever bought. I think it was about 250 quid at the time. And it really was I'd looked up to my dad's Eco Drives. He'd always talked about how special Eco Drive was. And so it felt like a real special purchase for me. And that was my serious watch until 2013. And everything went downhill or uphill, depending. My sister-in-law used to work for Gucci. She sent a text saying, I'm getting my boyfriend this watch for 90% off. Would you like one? I thought, I'm not really a Gucci person, but yeah, I'll take £1,000 watch for 100 quid. It'd be stupid not to accept that. And so I got a Gucci chronograph. It arrived the day that my first son was born. When I opened the box, it was dead. I casted the watch to the side because I had other shit to think about. And as I moved the watch, that's when I felt the rotor. I realized it wasn't dead. It just didn't have any power inside. So I shook it a bit, it started ticking, game on, put the watch on, and experiencing that watch, although we would laugh as watch people at a Gucci watch, experiencing that watch did change my viewpoint of expensive luxury watches. At that time, I thought a 250 quid Citizen that's all I needed. That felt special. That's what I wanted. And I was very happy with my Citizen. But then I suddenly realized how crystal clear, literally sapphire crystal was, how smooth and soft calfskin leather is, and how nice it is to have a watch that has a bit of heft behind it. Because this has mechanics inside, it's a steel case. Compared to the Eco Drive Citizen, this felt like luxury. I knew that Gucci didn't make watches. I knew that the mechanics inside this watch was far beyond what Gucci were capable of making. And so I wanted to find out who made this watch then. That's when I found watch forums. I started learning about Sleater and ETA and how actually it isn't just Gucci who doesn't make their watches. You've got Omega who use ETA movements. You've got Tag Heuer who use ETA movements. The realization that actually a lot of this luxury stuff, it isn't just Gucci and fashion brands that kind of cheat. That's how I saw it at the time. That these proper watch brands like Tag Heuer and Omega, they too also cheat by using other people's movements. So there's this weird realization that luxury watches is a funny world. But the bigger realization was other people like watches. That watches is a hobby. It's not just a tool that you wear on your wrist. That there's a community around watches. And then the rabbit hole opened up and I fell right in it. Although other watch brands buy in movements, this Gucci watch is separate from Omega and Tag Heuer because it is seen as a fashion brand. I quickly sold that on eBay. Can't remember how much I got for it, probably about 400 quid. And then that was me starting to save. This was when I started the Bark and Jack Instagram account with a friend of mine. It was originally called Barker and Jackson. My last name's Barker, his last name was Jackson. And he liked taking photographs of men's fashion and grooming stuff. And I liked taking photographs of watches. I started to go into ADs and try on various watches to see what I liked and essentially just document my exploration at that point of watches. Ultimately, I'd saved up enough money. I'd gone past Hamilton. I'd gone past Mont Blanc. I'd gone past Tag Heuer. And I started looking at Omega and Rolex. I was keen not to, I know it looks ironic now that I talk a lot about Rolex here, but I was keen not to go with Rolex. Keen because everyone talked about Rolex on forums and I just didn't want to go down that cliched route of getting what everyone else ultimately gets. I really had my eye on this Omega Speedmaster white dial with broad arrow blued hands. This thing was phenomenal and it was within budget. It was about 2,000, it was just shy of £2,500 at the time. And then I thought, what can I get from Rolex for the same money? Then I found a Rolex Explorer II, the 16570. They had it listed for £3,200. I emailed them and said, I'll take it off your hands for 2,600, I think it was. And straight away they replied and said, yeah, sure thing. And that was my watch in 2014, was a Rolex Explorer II 16570 with the polar dial. That watch was my absolute love and joy. I adored that watch. It went everywhere with me. We traveled all over the place. And although it was a Rolex, I liked the fact it wasn't a loud Rolex. And I loved this thing. It was my daily watch. It was my only watch. I wore it for my wedding. However odd that sounds, wearing a kilt and a Rolex Explorer II, that's the fancy watch that I had. A couple of years later, I decided I wanted to change the watch. In 2016, I thought, I've got a bit more money. Let's sell the Explorer II and see what I can get. I went watchless for a couple of weeks and it just felt weird. So that's when I went on Amazon and just bought myself a Seiko 5, the SNX S77. There's a lot of situations that are fixed by just having a Seiko 5. So it was quite cool having that watch. In 2016, that was my year to buy what I considered a fancy Rolex. It was either going to be a Batman or a Kermit. Ultimately, I went with the Kermit and I bought it for £5,990, negotiated it down from around 6,200, I think it was. And I wish I bought a truckload of those things back then, because now that watch is worth about £15,000. In 2017, I paid £995 for an Omega Speedmaster Reduced. I kept that watch for about 4 months. It really wasn't for me. It felt dated. It didn't tick the box that the Speedmaster Professional ticked for me. And so that went very, very quickly. I then bought myself a gorgeous and absolutely stunning, I don't know why I sold this, but I bought myself in 2017, again, it was a busy year. I bought an Omega Constellation with a linen dial. This thing was just stunning, and I absolutely love linen dials, and I haven't seen many linen dial constellations around. Still in 2017, this is only a year after buying my Kermit, and the Kermit had shot up in price massively. I think it was getting very close to £10,000, having only spent just under 6 for it. And so I was starting to feel uncomfortable living in central London wearing a near enough £10,000 watch. And so that's when I realized I needed to get an everyday nice watch. I got my heart set on a vintage Submariner, a 5513. I really wanted a matte dial 5513, but ultimately I couldn't afford that. And so I found a 5513 from 1985. Style-wise, I thought that was the perfect everyday watch. So much so that that watch is what started this YouTube channel. Ultimately, I sold that watch, but not until I'd bought what was to become my favorite watch of all time, which was a Rolex Explorer 14270. I fell in love pretty much instantly with the Explorer 1, which at the time I bought for £3,250. The final watch that I treated myself to in 2017 was a CWC G10, which still I think is perhaps my coolest watch. Paid 70 quid for this thing. I actually bought 2 of them. I ended up selling one because it was so bashed up. This one was pretty bashed up. I just needed a lot of polywatch and a good clean. This is a military. I'll put a link to a video that I've done on this because this thing is really very, very cool. Finally got to a new year, and in 2018, I treated myself to a Seiko SKX 007K1. I really didn't understand the hype of the SKX. I thought the SKX was just really quite a weird looking watch, similar to the Explorer. When I got it, it kind of made sense. In 2018, that's when we launched our NATO straps. Over at barkandjack.com, you can check out our NATO straps, and everything is back in stock now. In 2018, I also bought a Tudor Black Bay Harrods edition. The day I picked this up, I came home. That's when I found out that an offer that we'd placed on a house in Scotland had been accepted. And I got into a lot of trouble having just bought, I can't remember how much it was, 2.5 grand? 3 grand, something like that. I got in trouble. So that watch didn't hang around for very long, nor did the next watch, which was the Batman, the Rolex GMT Master II, the 116710 BLNR. If you remember back to when I bought my Kermit, the decision was between the Kermit and this watch. Ultimately, at the time, I felt like the Kermit had more character to it. I didn't bond with the Batman, and to be fair, I started to take the channel and the business part of Bark and Jack much more seriously. And so I sold that watch. It meant that I could buy the gear that I needed to buy to take the channel to the next level. So I didn't buy much in 2018, and in 2019, I bought myself my first Grand Seiko. This was the SBGN 001. It was a phenomenal GMT watch. That movement inside really is mind-blowingly good. And it is, I'll put a link, I won't go into detail here. I'll put a link here that talks about that watch. It is mind-blowingly good. Ultimately, I sold it eventually, and I've got my Tudor Black Bay 58 Black. Nothing hugely much to say about that watch. I guess the only thing I'd say about that watch is I'd bought the Black Bay 58, and very soon after that, Tudor had got in contact and lent me the Pelagos. Had I borrowed the Pelagos before I bought the Black Bay 58, I'd be sitting here with the Pelagos, and I'd probably be wearing it. The Pelagos changed my viewpoint, and this is what I like about documenting, or at least noting down this watch journey, is I can see my personal tastes changing from someone who really enjoys vintage watches to someone who's now sitting here with a brand new, very modern looking, very modern designed Rolex. That transition is really quite big. And the transition of moving from smaller watches to larger watches happened with the Pelagos. The bigness didn't feel out of place. And so the Pelagos opened the doors for me to own a larger watch. I'd already bought the Black Bay 58, so I didn't want to buy another Tudor. And so I looked at other larger watches, and that's when I found the Omega Seamaster Professional 300 with the white dial. This watch typically would have been too big for me, but because of the Pelagos changing the narrative around larger watches, I kind of understood the Seamaster better, or rather, I could see it in a different light. And so the Seamaster, that was my new watch in 2020. In 2021, Rolex announced a new Explorer II, and I had to get it. I haven't done a video on this watch yet. I'm going to do a whole video talking about my new Explorer II. But guys, that is my full watch journey. Up until now, there's still so much more to explore. I'll be really interested to hear if any of those early pieces were ones that you had. Guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like the start of this video, hit the subscribe button down there and the little bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. Don't forget to jump over to barkandjack.com and check out the watch accessories and straps that we have over there. We have full stock of all of our NATO straps, and these will be coming out really quite soon. Take care.